Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Rumcast. This is the podcast that talks all things rum related with the people who love and shape it. My name is John Gulla, and with me on this expedition into the rum wilderness today is none other than Mr. Will Hookinga. We're excited for everyone to listen to our interview today with Ed Tiedge, Master Distiller for Copal Tree Distillery in Belize and manufacturer of Copalli Rum. But before we get to that, of course, Will, what's going on with you there in the Tennessee Valley rumland?
Well, first of all, I like how you referred to the distillery as the manufacturers of Copalli Rum. It's one of those, just big official words that I didn't expect to hear in the intro. But
you got to throw in a 10-cent word there once in a while just to grab people's attention. Yeah. They don't just make rum, they manufacture it.
Exactly. That actually makes it sound worse somehow. I feel like that's a very industrial.
You're right. It sounds synthetic almost. And they're the opposite of that.
They're the opposite of that, as we'll get into. But anyway, sorry about the tangent. I'm doing well here. I wanted to make reference to our previous episode. In our intro, we each made our March Madness style brackets where we had kind of we seeded or sort of pretended that El Dorado rums were in a March Madness style tournament, and we came up with the seeds. What should be the number 1 seed, the number 2 seed, the number 3 seed, etc. You and we aligned on some stuff, and we had some pretty big disagreements. I think some of my picks you were particularly not agreeing with at all. And I have to say, I got it just as bad from other people as I did from you after the episode aired. So both online and even in person, I had people specifically bring up ones that I got wrong, which I love to hear. But yeah, the having Pussers as the number 1 seed for the non-DDL, like the non-El Dorado side of the bracket, which I hesitate to even repeat that I did that, because without the context, without the explanation, it sounds even worse. Now, of course, there were people who, even with the explanation and the context, thought I was an idiot, but we'll put all that aside. I'll just say, I mean, we had a couple of patrons submit their own fully seeded tournaments, which was great to see. At least 2 of them had that Pussers one as the number 7, which is the second to last seed. So it was it was a tough. I've done a lot of contemplating, a lot of soul searching since then. But did you receive any feedback about your picks?
I saw the online stuff where people talked about it, but I think I was in the right this time, so I didn't get much pushback on it. I feel like
you just still hearing about the fantasy draft, right?
So I was going to say exactly. I was going to mention the same thing. I was going to say this feels to me like my fantasy draft blunder that we did back in, what was it, October of last year? Yeah. This is your now, because I never stopped hearing about that. It was like months of how could you not have picked that and let him do that? And I was like, yeah. It was a bad choice. Yeah. So yeah, it's nice to finally have you experience this now, and we be on even terms again in terms of blunders. So.
I'm assuming you're doing the thing on Zoom right now where you have the blurred out background, and I'm assuming that's because you're already preparing for this year's fantasy draft, and you've got a big board back there. You're ranking all the prospects and everything, and you don't want me to see your strategy.
I'm already researching. I'm already researching. I cannot give away what I've worked on so far. Exactly right. So it's hidden information. And this year you're going down, just so you know. We are doing that again, by the way. Yes.
We'll see. Yeah. It was great last year. We had over 100 people vote, and resoundingly select my team as the winner. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes this year.
I don't know what qualifies as resounding there, but okay. All right.
You know it when you feel it. It's just one of those things. There's no precise definition, but you just know it when it happens. So anyway, all that aside, other than having to deal with that, I'm doing pretty good. Before we get to the interview, I want to talk about one other little recent experience I had that maybe you can relate to, maybe listeners can relate to, but I want to share a frustrating blind tasting experience that I had. How often do you blind taste stuff? Just try to quiz yourself, see if you can figure out what something is.
Not as much as I should, and the reason is I'm typically trying a lot of new rums, and I try them right out of the bottle, or the sample's labeled, so I don't really have the chance to do that. But
Right.
to your point, I really enjoy doing
It's fun, right?
blind
Yeah.
tasting. Yeah,
And
and
humbling.
right, humbling and challenging in the right ways, and it's fun to just work things out. Honestly, I get better tasting notes typically when I do it blind.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Like, do you mean just they come easier to you, or you feel like the ones that you come up with are more unique? Like you pick up
Exactly.
more stuff.
The latter, I think,
Okay.
whereas I have an expectation going in. Oh, if this is
I
a
gotcha.
Guyana rum, I
Mm-hmm.
already have a something in my mind of what it's going to be like.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that works, and sometimes maybe it doesn't, because of the different distilleries in different regions and countries or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But the idea is, if I don't know what it is at all, I tend to just try to pick things out that I'm getting, and
Mm-hmm.
then see how that marries up later once I know what it is. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah, I could see that for sure. So, what happened to me? I was at Chopper, the great local rum bar here in Nashville,
Hmm.
and I would, if anyone's coming through Nashville right now, you should go to Chopper because Max Carlin there, who runs the bar, he has some really inventive drinks on the menu right now. He has one called the sweet corn, which is designed to taste like
Ooh.
elote, and it has like a cotija cheese foam on it. It sounds insane. It's really cool. And he has another one called Ants on a Log that's inspired by the snack that we all grew up eating. Anyway, that's
Huh.
not the point of this, but Max was behind the bar, and I was with a couple of other people, and he was like, "Hey, let's play Name That Rum." And he poured us some rums, and we had to try to guess what they are. And the first one came, and I think all of us knew it was Jamaica, and we narrowed it down to like Long Pond Clarendon. And I don't remember which one it was, but we ended up I ended up thinking it was the opposite of whichever one it was.
Okay.
But like I was like,
Okay.
okay, I was in the ballpark. I felt pretty
Yeah.
good about that. Um, then we get to the next two, and the frustrating thing was I don't when I do blind tasting, I often find that my first instinct, like what I think right away, I think there's a subconscious element to it,
Hmm.
is often closer than if I try to sort of really sit back and think about it. But I think I was feeling the pressure. I was in a public setting and everything, and I had one of those gut reactions to both of the next two that I tried, but I ignored it, and I started trying to think like, well, could these rums be there? What other rums are likely to be in this bar? Is Max trying to trick me? I got really inside my own head about it. And
Yeah.
then what ended up happening was when he revealed it, my initial instinct was at least like it was either in the ballpark or like correct in both cases, but I didn't say it out loud. And so I didn't say anything. I didn't want to be the like I almost said that guy, or like the I was gonna say that
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah.
So I
That
just had to
is.
sit there
Yeah.
quietly and be like, damn it. I was so close. If I had just listened, if I had just followed my initial instinct, I would have looked like such a smart guy. And
I. Yeah.
I'm not saying what they are because I don't want to sound like I'm now retroactively trying to do that on the podcast to prove how
Uh-huh.
smart I am. That's not what this is about. What this is about is just when you're blind tasting, a note I'm making to myself after this is just trust your gut. Don't try to get too distracted, too inside your own head about
Yeah.
like all the other
The
factors.
meta
Just
game. Yeah.
pay attention to the rum itself and what it is speaking to you. So
Right. Right.
that was a tough lesson I had to learn this weekend.
Yeah. I would say if you go there like once a week or more, and Max knows you to that extent of like he's going to give you stuff that's now going to try to throw you, then you got that like meta game thing going on. But lacking that, I agree with you
This isn't something.
100%.
This isn't a weekly
Yeah.
tradition. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
it
Right.
was yeah. So anyway, for all the blind tasters out there, the people who are trying to get better at it, like I'm trying to get better at it because it's
Hmm.
like as we said, really hard. That's something I'm gonna listen to next time is really just following my gut. But
Yeah.
John, with that out of the way, as you mentioned in the intro, we interviewed Ed Tiedge, the master distiller at Copal Tree Distillery, the manufacturers of Copalli Rum. And this was a really cool interview. I think it's interesting to me that we did this one, and this wasn't intentional, it just kind of happened, but we did this one pretty shortly after doing the Renegade. interview.
Right.
And as we were getting ready for this, and even as we talked to Ed, I couldn't help but see all these parallels. And I'm not saying they're doing the exact same things. They're very different in their approaches, very different in the products they're putting out there. But just when we talked about Renegade and kind of introduced that, this is interesting because it's this large scale, not large scale on the sense of like an Appleton or a Mount Gay or something like that, but larger than the average brand new startup distillery. This isn't just your local craft place that is making these tiny batches and stuff. So that was kind of what was one of the draws to us for that was, they're making this big investment in building this distillery, planting all this sugarcane, doing really interesting rums. And when you look at what Copalli is doing over in Belize, it's really similar. It's in that kind of medium scale size where they've got a couple of pot stills for smaller batch stuff, but they also have a fairly large, column still that can really crank out volume. And they've got a 3,000 acre organic farm, planting lots of sugarcane there. And so it's really one of those things where it's just, this is someone that has made a very substantial investment in the rum category, and not only the rum category, but the cane juice rum category. And they're really serious about doing this. And, you and I have both, I think, talked about Copalli products on the podcast before, and we both, have favorable impressions of them, have enjoyed what we've tasted from them so far. And they've got a few newer releases on the horizon. They've been around since 2018. So they're just on the cusp of releasing their first 5-year rum and some single varietal stuff as well. So I think it's an exciting time to talk to them. And it's another kind of window into just the excitement that I feel around the cane juice category right now, with so many more people outside of the go-to places we think of, like Martinique and other French associated islands like that, now making large investments in the category.
Yeah, one of the things also, and you mentioned Renegade, that is similar with them is that sustainability factor also, which we don't get into too much, but I wanted to say that I feel like there's a different category for what Copalli has been able to do with sustainability, and the way that they've approached things, and also Renegade to an extent, because they're both newer distilleries, or newer than most. It is really interesting to see how people are setting up to utilize the land and to give back to the land and make that a cycle that is very sustainable over time is an interesting thing. And I really appreciate that angle of what they're doing as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you're starting from scratch, you can kind of just, it's almost easier to design those systems from the get-go and build the distillery to suit that model, as opposed to if you have a distillery that was built 40, 50, 60 years ago and, didn't have a lot of those practices in mind, then having to try to sort of retrofit things, update things to fit that model. So it is a really interesting approach. And I think this may be the only interview where we talk about a flavored rum product as much as we did.
Yeah, I was just about to mention it too.
Yeah. And if you hear that and you sort of be like, oh, like, I don't know about that. Just hang on.
Like
for
my
the
usual
ride.
reaction.
John and I both, we don't talk about flavored rums much on this show, but they have one that we both view pretty favorably, and is pretty interesting and unique. And there's a cool story behind how it came together, which Ed shared with us. So I think with that out of the way, we can take a quick break and go over to the show. We are here with Ed Tiedge, the master distiller at Copal Tree Distillery, the makers of Copalli Rum. And Ed, I wanted to see, am I correct in guessing that we caught you at maybe your busiest time of the year? Because as I understand it, when I was, going back and reading up on Copalli and everything, if I'm correct, your harvest season is fully underway right now. And I didn't realize that until I was, reading stuff, that it runs only from March until June for you. So are you just kind of working the stills around the clock, processing all that fresh juice while you still can?
Oh yeah, right now we harvest 5 days a week.
Okay.
So it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We skip Thursday and then Friday, Saturday. But the stills are running 24/7. So we're operating everything 24/7. So the boiler crew, we have shifts of the boiler crew. We have shifts of the distillery crew. So we're in constant motion here. It's an exciting time of year. Yeah.
So you sleep on Sundays, right? And then that's it.
Well, not everybody sleeps on Sundays, but the mill guys have it the easiest. They only work 5 days a week. The mill and the I won't say the easiest, but they put in the least amount of hours. The mill guys and the farm harvesters.
Gotcha. So the other parts of the year, non-harvest season, this is going to sound like a silly question. I know that you're doing tons of stuff during that time of the year, but when you're, not constantly, distilling everything, I guess you maybe have some runs that are left over that you can distill, but what does it look like when it's not harvest season?
Well, we'll do some of our infused and redistilled products. We'll try to do in that period of time, because it's not critical to have the whole team working, so we can do those a little bit more selectively when we need to do them. Instead of during the season, it's like the harvest is a harvest, and we got to get the stuff out of the field and get it processed while we can. And then it's always, when you're running, 24/7 for 21 weeks, stuff will break.
Okay.
Sometimes you can fix it perfectly, and sometimes you wrap it up in duct tape and baling wire.
Right.
Until you have opportunity to fix it properly. And that's usually what the off season is. We'll do a complete maintenance inventory of the entire facility, what projects need to be done, and what the priorities are, order parts, because getting parts where we are in Belize is always a multi-process. Do that. And plus, a lot of the staff, they'll accrue quite a bit of overtime during the season, and which most of it is paid in cash, but sometimes they'll elect to take it in time off. So we kind of, break those days up too.
Gotcha. So I wanted to kind of go back to the beginning. I think, most of the time when new distilleries launch, they're fairly small. And I feel like Copalli it's not massive, but it certainly doesn't strike me as small. It's almost kind of like in between stage where it's a serious operation. You've got the multiple pot stills, you have the big columns. It seems like you're already in a growing amount of markets. And my understanding is that you've been there since the beginning. So I wanted to start by asking just, how did you get involved in the first place? What was kind of the vision that sold you on the opportunity? I'm imagining you relocated to Belize, and how much does where you are now match up with what you imagined when you first started?
Well, that's a interesting question, and there are several answers to that. Now, I'll actually try to give you the honest ones.
That's what we love.
We prefer that. Yeah.
So, before I came down to Belize, I was actually I owned and operated my small distillery in Westchester County, New York. We made whiskey, some vodkas and gins, some made from honey, some made from grain spirits, and a bit of malt whiskey. So I would say that gin and malt whiskey was my specialty there.
So, everything but rum, basically.
Basically everything but rum. Well, we did make mead and redistill that. So in one sense, it was kind of like the same thing. But my training was as an eau de vie maker. So working with cane juice, actually, that kind of brought me back to what I knew how to do. But anyway, how I got involved with it was that it was like March, I'm going to say 2014. I'd have to look back though. 2014, a friend of mine let me know that there was this group in California who owned some organic restaurants, and they were kind of involved in starting a project, rum distillery in Belize, and they were looking for a consultant, and would I be interested? And it was cold in the distillery, and I said absolutely. So I met with them. We chatted a little bit. I worked with them kind of on a consulting basis, with a little small retainer, a few times a month, phone calls, find out where the project was, what they were thinking about doing with it, what my thoughts were on it. And then about a year goes by and they say, well, we're finally getting around to putting this thing together. Do you want to be the guy? And I said, absolutely.
So cold New York winters are, what's partially
well,
responsible.
that convinced me to take the meeting, right? What got me down there was, one is that, and not to undersell it, but the operation was well funded, right? You didn't want to go to something that was, funding on a shoestring, relocate your life. Two was, the opportunity to make something with a really unique ingredient, right? That, you weren't seeing in the marketplace. Because, as a craft distiller in New York, or anywhere in the US, if you make whiskey or you make bourbon, everybody's using number 2 dent corn, right? Basically. If you make rye whiskey in New York, you're buying organic rye from the same guy that everybody else buys it from, because he's one of the 2 farmers that does it. So all your ingredients, everybody's kind of making the same thing in kind of the same ways, and differentiating yourself is difficult. And, it's just not that much fun to make stuff that everybody else makes, right?
Sure.
And so this was kind of an opportunity to work with a unique ingredient in a unique environment, organic products, and be able to define the product and how it's going to, touch the consumers for the first time. And as a distiller or as a maker of anything, you don't get many chances to do that.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like the real thing, is that, I get to, for good or bad, I get to have the first shot at making this and see if it works as a product.
Yeah. And speaking of that, so you're given the keys to the kingdom, if you will. And as you mentioned, your background was in pretty much everything but rum. So with those 2 things, how did you even begin to approach this? Did you rely solely on that background, or did you just go into diving about learning about as much about rum as you could? How did that work out?
Well, at first, they had designed, or the engineering firm that had designed and overseen the construction of the distillery, built it in what ownership thought they wanted in the distillery. So they hired a Puerto Rican engineering firm.
Okay.
We need a rum distillery, and we're making rum for organic sugarcane juice. And the engineer says, I know exactly what you need. So they build I don't want to say ethanol plant, but they built a 3-column distillation unit that provides a very high level of purity in the spirit that comes out. Right? And there's several, we could name the guys that do that. And, when everybody tasted it, and that was the one thing during the initial meetings I had, they told me this is what they're buying and this is the equipment. And then they would tell me what the vision they were for the spirit. I would say, I don't know if this is really what you want, right? This is the right equipment. But I guess I had said it enough times that they also, kind of like as an aside, instilled a alembic pot still. They bought one and kind of put that in one of the side buildings.
Yeah.
So after we kind of made very light rum, they say, well, this isn't exactly what we were looking for.
Were you like, I told you?
No, I didn't do that. I thought that, but I didn't say that.
Okay.
Don't get fired is the motto.
We have a 2,000 liter cognac still. And I say, I know what to do with that. And so we just ran some batches, standard cognac distillations, 2 distillations of the wine, the cane wine and the low wines, the spirit. And, we had some people coming and tasting it. And one of those was the gentleman from Foursquare. He was nice enough to come down for his fee and kind of critique our operation.
Okay, that's interesting.
And when he tasted the pot still stuff, he said, "You could sell this." So that was high praise indeed.
I was going to say high praise,
high praise indeed. And so that's kind of what got us on the track of using the pot stills as kind of like the primary flavor portion of the rum, and then the light rum either for blending or for other purposes, for other type of products that we're making. So that's how that kind of just happened. It's like, we bought a cognac still. I know how to use a cognac still. We're going to try it this way. So I'll have to say that I was pretty, probably a cross between arrogant and ignorant about, how other guys were making rum. And one way is like, I didn't really care. I knew what equipment I had, and I was trying to do the best thing that we could with the equipment that we had.
Yeah, right. That arrogant ignorance blend seems to be key for a lot of people to success. Yeah.
Well, and you're also working with the natural constraints, like you said.
Right.
They had the big columns still already. They had the alembic pots, and it's you've found something that works.
Right.
Which is really interesting. So I'm correct then in understanding that the initial column still system that they had put in there is the one that's still there today. You're still utilizing the same stuff.
We still use it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that, I'm sipping on some Copalli white right here, and that is a blended product. What is it? It's 75% column and 25% pot. Is that right?
That is correct. That's correct.
And that balance really comes through in it, Jimmy. That's one of the things I think stands out about this rum is I think it's really approachable and versatile because of the kind of the column still, profile. But that 25% of pot does bring that really nice, interesting element that I think even if you are someone who's already a rum enthusiast, you taste it and you go, oh, there's something interesting here, So I think it's come together really nicely.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't take credit for the blend percentage because, as a distiller, I would have wanted more pot still. So wiser people than I decided, hey, let's not be too aggressive. Let's make it more approachable. It might, because it's sugarcane rums can be a challenging taste for some people on the palate.
Yeah, it's a very new, different.
Right. People don't think about rum that way.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. So, people aren't used to that profile.
I think as, a way to kind of, introduce that style to people, I think it's, it was an excellent choice to do it in those percentages.
I think our listeners will be secretly kind of like nodding along, being like, okay, yeah, Ed's one of us. He wanted more pot still in the blend. So
and I'm sure down the line, maybe we can make that happen.
Well, when is Ed's 50-50 blend coming out?
Well, Ed's 100% blend is going to get released this year.
Oh, okay.
So that took a little bit more convincing. But we are doing a special varietal of 100% pot still unaged product this year.
Oh, this is is this the black cane?
This is the black cane. Yeah, we sent a few pallets over to France, kind of like to test the market and get some reception for that. But we've also, we're gearing up to release, hopefully by the end of the year, the black cane product.
Okay, we'll circle back to that later in the conversation. Yeah, we'll want to come back to that.
And actually, this is a good time to talk about, we usually talk about sustainability and sustainable practices with people, but I wanted to push this one up towards the front of the conversation for a few reasons. And that is because it seems like you and Copalli started with the mission being making a distillery that was fully sustainable, producing zero waste. And I know you were directly involved in that planning, as you mentioned. So I was hoping you could talk a little bit about that with us and what it went in to start that. And also, has there been any adjustments since then you've had to make along the way to keep that commitment?
So I can't say that I drove the process. I was an observer of the process when I came into it. I had some very bright people that had maybe not had done that for distilleries, but had done all these kind of mitigation and sustainable work before and incorporating into this.
Okay.
But I guess I'm, at the risk of becoming making a religious comment. I'm kind of like, having grown up Catholic, the most fervent Catholics are the guys people who convert to Catholicism. So,
right.
As far as being introduced to the sustainable culture and the idea and the concepts of organic farming, I guess I've become a convert, and I'm probably one of the more fervent
believers.
I like the analogy. Yeah.
So yeah, the whole project, or all the streams that came into the distillery, they wanted to kind of be able to use everything that came into the distillery and put it back on the field. So that came, from the use of the gas for the boiler, naturally ash that goes back to the flame, goes back to the fields, using vinasse as a fertigation product, so it also fertilizes and irrigates. And even the waste, what other liquid waste streams we have, there are settling ponds and ways to filter the product before it hits the wetlands and then the water table and the river system. So all those things, even the idea of capturing rainwater for us, all those were part of the inception and the design of the distillery. So it's integral to that, and that was based on what ownership really was looking for in introducing this to Belize, because everybody's committed to the people of Belize and to the land of Belize too, right? And set up something that made things worse there, right? You wanted to kind of create an economic opportunity for the people in the country, but not leave it worse off than when you got there.
Yeah, I was going to mention that just researching and looking at all of the pictures of the Copal Tree Distillery and the Copal Tree Lodge that is nearby there in Belize, and you're essentially like surrounded by rainforest. Right.
So it's a little valley, that used to be orange groves when they try to have citrus industry down there, and we're surrounded by rainforest on all sides.
That's incredible. It looks like an amazing place to visit. So
yes, it is.
What was that a major change of pace for you in terms of coming from a small craft distillery in New York, and you mentioned that you became a convert on sustainability practices and things like that. How much of a change of distiller's mindset is it coming from a place that isn't this kind of closed loop system to a place that is totally? Are there things in your approach to the craft that you have to change to adjust to that along the way?
I don't think there was anything, the way we're doing things. It's certainly what it does. It makes it a lot easier, as a manager of the facility, because, you don't have to figure out, how you got to get people to haul stuff away.
Right.
You have to, special treatment. You have to treat things with chemicals to make it acceptable for the environment, all those sorts of things. So I think from a flow management point of view, it makes it a little bit easier because where the stuff is going, right? And there is a use for it at the end. So I think from my perspective, it made things maybe just a little bit easier to handle.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I was just talking to not a rum distiller, but a distiller I know here in Nashville the other day who's, calling a bunch of, waste management companies and stuff because he's, got all this, I guess it's vinasse or, whatever's left over that he needs to get rid of. And yeah, having your own closed loop system would probably be pretty convenient. I want to talk a little bit about the sugar cane. That's a big part of this operation. And I think anytime I see a new distillery pop up somewhere in the world and they're focused on rum, they're doing cane juice and they're growing all the sugar cane themselves, that's when I'm like, and especially when they're kind of the size that y'all are down there, that's when I'm really like, okay, they are really serious about this, because it's not easy to do all of this stuff once you start factoring in the farming and everything, all the the variables that it introduces. So give us kind of the overview of what the farming side of things look like. You have two what I believe are heirloom cane varietals that were local to the area. How did you kind of settle on those varietals? And I also, you mentioned releasing a black cane single varietal later this year. Do you use both of them in equal amounts for your current rums you're making? Give us kind of the sense of what all that looks like.
Well, when we started, they actually started the test fields before I got there. So what they did is they went to some of because there used to be more sugarcane farming locally in the area, probably about 100 years ago. That industry predominantly became a northern industry, northern Belize. That's where the sugar mills are.
Okay.
Northern farms are. But people kept those, in small plots in the villages, their own sugarcane plots. And so what we did was we kind of went to those and kind of, started grabbing different varietals and planted those and grew small plots of those to see what kind of characteristics they had. There was a variety of different genotypes that you could see that, they were clearly different from each other. And, some of them were what you would call as, soft chewing cane, right? So if you cut it up, you actually could, chew the pulp and the juice, get the juice, extract the juice of it. And some of them were much harder, which were clearly they were remnants or examples of the more commercial varieties that were being grown in the north.
Okay.
So the principal difference between what we started focusing on was really the quality of the juice, right? Because a commercial sugar cane, if you're making sugar in a factory, there's only two things you care about. You care about the Brix content, the amount of sugar in it, and the fiber content, because after you press the juice for the sugar, you're left over with fire, and that's energy for the boiler, which produces steam and electricity, right? So those are your two elements that you worry most about. And you don't really care what the juice tastes like, right?
Right.
For us, it was exactly the opposite. We really cared, certainly wanted a high sugar content, a reasonably high sugar content, but it was more important what the totality of the juice tasted like.
Well, what do you are there certain specific characteristics you're looking for in tasting the juice, or are you just kind of contrasting them and being like, this one tastes better than the other?
At that point, we had about 6 that we kind of were honing in on, and we were just saying, okay, we like this one better than this one.
Yeah.
And then we would make, small batches of rum with it. And we kind of settled on what we would call a yellow and a red cane, right? And we started growing those. And after we started growing those, we noticed that interspersed in some of them, there was the completely different one. We call it black cane, but what they are is that they're a very, very dark purple with a waxy coating on it, so it looks black. And they were distinguished by their type, and also that the stalks were very thick, about as thick around as my wrist. You could see the red cane was kind of more, I won't say pencil shaped, but much thinner, very heavy stalks, and not quite as tall.
Okay.
So we kind of pulled those aside and say, okay, what do these taste like? And we started pressing the juice and like that, and that was actually a revelation. That was the most different tasting sugarcane juice we ever had. So that's when we started doing separate small plots of that, trying to develop that. But initially it was red and a yellow cane that we were doing. And we ultimately stopped doing the yellow cane because we just weren't that happy with the quality. Compared to the red, we weren't that happy with the quality of the rum that it was producing. And then we kind of started increasing slowly the amount of black cane allocated to the fields. So that's basically how we got to those. We just kind of started with a bunch of different things, tried the juice, say, okay, these seem okay, do a little bit more, make a little bit more rum from it, and then further culled it down till we, one is a happy accident, and one is something that we just kind of, had settled on and thought this made a solid rum. So now, all our products are primarily made with the red cane. So the white rum is all red cane, the rest of the rum is red cane, and what we're going to release as a 5-year is going to be the red cane. Now we do have black cane aging. We have some barrels of that aging. We're not sure if we're going to end up using that as a blend in our 5-year going forward, or that'll be an individual product.
Okay.
And then we're releasing the 5-year. We're releasing the black cane as a pot still unaged spirit.
Right.
So that's
okay.
That's kind of how we're doing that. But it wasn't this kind of like grand plan. It's like we kind of tried a bunch of things and we start narrowing down until we get something that we really like.
So the black cane single varietal you mentioned that you're going to release, unaged, that's the one that you kind of, pushed for to do.
Right.
That's 100% pot still, as you said. What is, have you arrived at a proof you're going to release that at?
Yeah, that's going to be 90 proof in the US.
Okay, nice. Okay. Cool. I like that. Yeah, I like the little bump.
Bump higher, yep.
And then, this is kind of economic question, I guess. And I don't mean this to be, some people might take this question the wrong way. So I'm not trying to mean it the wrong way, but, you know, building a distillery from scratch, starting a rum brand, really, really expensive. Now, you said like it was well funded and everything. I think many companies would also release a sourced product in their early years as they scale up so they can have something aged right away. Did that question ever come up for y'all? How did you think about that, and what made you ultimately decide not to go that way? Or at least to my knowledge, you didn't go that way.
We didn't. Well, if there was talk about that, that was before I got on the scene, because when I got on the scene, they had already put deposit down on equipment. Right? They were doing this.
Yeah,
in fact,
yeah.
I think the first vision was of an even larger distillery than we have now.
Oh, wow.
Do something a little bit further north than we currently are in one of the other fields that we're developing, and probably something that was at 5 or 6 times the throughput on the columns, and they decided, well, maybe that's a little bit too big to start out with. So it was always envisioned to be a producer right away, and not as far as a sourcing product. And I think that to the idea that they want to do with cane juice, or something that's you could produce there on the land, it's like it's difficult to source cane juice products, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't really, for us, it's as much about place as about the product, right? You want to have a product that represents gives a sense of place of where that it's made. And if there's nothing wrong with sourcing it while you're trying to figure out what your story is, but then you have to be able to kind of reasonably replicate that product, when you do build a distillery.
So, right, unless you just want to grow it as a completely separate brand, sort of.
Right, right. Yeah. So there was nobody else. I guess if somebody else was making cane juice rum in Belize at the time, they might have kind of thought about that. But since there wasn't, they figured the only way we're going to get this done the way we want to is build a distillery. Now, I'm more risk averse. I would have probably built something smaller first.
Okay.
But that's just me, right?
Yeah. So talking a little bit about the aging program a little bit. So you mentioned already you have the white rum, which that one is rested for, I think it's like 6 months in stainless steel.
Yep.
Right. So I wouldn't call that an unaged rum. I think Will and I were debating a little bit about that and how people view that.
We've had conversations on, because, some companies release a white rum they may call an unaged rum that's just, pretty much off the still. And some people have, a lengthy resting process, but it's not resting in barrels or wood. It's resting in stainless steel. And so, right. Yeah, John has always felt hesitant to call that unaged, whereas I don't know, I call it unaged, but I also get that like it spent some time in a container of some sort.
Oh yeah, but, it's sitting in a container allows whatever kind of shock from distillation kind of things to calm down a little bit. It's certainly spirit even after a couple of months than when it first comes off the still. But yeah, I think I think unaged kind of represents really what it is. People think of aged products as stuff that comes from barrels, and this certainly has not been a barrel. It's kind of been,
Right. You couldn't put an age statement on it anyway. So
clear. Right. I get that. Okay. So then you have your barrel rested rum, right? Which is rested in ex-bourbon barrels. I think I even saw that you only used Jack Daniel's barrels because you like them better because of the filtration.
Well, we started out that way.
Okay.
And then, we've kind of expanded our horizons, one, because Jack Daniel's barrels became difficult to get.
Okay.
We found kind of an interesting thing. So, and now we're back to where we are this year, that the things that we really, really liked are difficult to get. So we have to make, concessions on what's available and what we would think would be, interesting going forward. But that's absolutely true. We started out with a mix of Jack Daniel's and Jim Beam barrels, and we could get whatever we wanted, and we quickly gravitated to the Jack Daniel's barrels because of the way they filter their spirit before it goes into the barrel.
Right.
It makes less grainy, so what's left behind is I guess less bourbony than like a Jack Daniel's, than a Jim Beam barrel. Yeah. Nothing wrong with bourbon, but cane spirits are gentle spirits, so it's easy to overwhelm it with particular barrel styles.
I agree. We're not looking for Yeah,
y'all know you're gonna get a phone call from someone up here in Lincoln County telling you those are not ex-bourbon barrels, they are ex-Tennessee whiskey barrels because of that filtration process, right?
Make that clear, right?
The second part of that question, I guess, as you kind of were alluding to, is looking at different things. And Will and I have talked a lot with recent distilleries that are using new oak barrels to age rum in, and also, you know, a lot of non-whiskey used barrels. Have you all been experimenting with either of those at this point?
As a matter of fact, we have.
Oh,
One of the ideas we had when we started, because as you pointed out at the beginning, that there is a lengthy amount of time that we are not running the stills. And so one of the ideas was that, well, in the off season, in addition to, you know, the other things we might do, let's make some corn whiskey.
Wow.
So we did that for a couple of years. The only problem is that, you know, we insisted on growing the corn ourselves, and there were two issues. Is that while the whiskey was delicious, the new make was delicious, the yields coming from the field were not that high. Apparently, where our land was, we weren't getting you weren't getting 200 bushels an acre from us, and so the cost of putting whiskey in a barrel was extremely high. So we kind of silently quickly stopped that project. But that left us with a number of new number 4 charred barrels. So I think it was last year we said, hey, let's put some rum in those, and we'll see how those turn. So we probably have about a couple of dozen of those sitting around waiting to see what they'll turn into. We've also done things with some different barrels. So we've done some experiments with cognac and port barrels. In fact, we did a small release last year of a cognac barrel that we sold in California. So that we thought that had really nice profile. So we continue to do, you know, interesting things. We'll buy a few barrels, or, you know, some wine barrels or something like that, and put some rum in it to see what kind of finishes we get and see if there's something we like. I don't see that to be kind of like a huge program for us.
Right, right.
But something that's fun, that we can offer to people that are really interested in the art and what we're doing.
Yeah,
you know,
like us.
Sure. Exactly.
What certain clients like that kind of stuff, and we're willing to do that. Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah. And
yeah, I mean, we have some sauterne barrels that are coming, so I'm excited about, you know, I'm going to do 2 sets of experiments. We're going to finish in them, and then we're going to put some new make in that and see what happens.
One thing I wanted to circle back to, you may have mentioned it earlier, but I can't remember. So we've established that the Copalli White 75% column still, 25% pot. You have the single varietal bottling coming. It's going to be 100% pot, but everything that you're aging is all pot still, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so how did you arrive at that decision? I mean, we know that you're, you know, pot still #1 fan, very pro pot still. But for, you know, from a cost perspective, I'm assuming the pot still rum, you know, is more difficult to make, you know, smaller batches and everything, you know, then the rum has to age. So what kind of went into the decision to go, you know, for aging, we're going to go 100% pot still?
Well, I think it was, I don't know how much thought went into it. We basically, our columns have a tremendous amount of throughput, and our pot stills have much less.
Yeah.
And so really as we've started up, every year we would be more focused on maximizing the pot still. And at some point, you know, we would fill tanks up, and then, you know, maybe the sales forecast didn't work out, or, you know, something like a pandemic happens and your sales forecast doesn't have that, and we want to harvest next year, and we have stuff in the tanks, and so goes into a barrel. So that becomes our unit of storage. So I think, you know, for my preference, that kind of evolved that way. I don't know if we always do it that way. I think there's some thinking, you know, because there is an economic,
right.
You know,
scalability is difficult there.
Right. So you'll probably start seeing some blending going on in the future. But right now, everything that's in the aging warehouse is 100% pot still.
Okay, got it.
I have a good question here for you, but I've kind of got to provide a little bit of context.
Way to introduce it
and wind my way in. We've seen a recent trend from Martinique Agricole Rums and maybe some other rums out there also that are now producing an organic version of their product, and it's often like used as a headline on the bottle or written in very big font, and it's offered a lot of times at like a much higher price point than their regular offering. So Copalli is and has always been an organic product. I know the word organic is on the label, but it isn't quite as pronounced or thrown out there. And your price point is far less than those options that I've seen out there that are highly organic and touting that. So I guess I wanted to kind of ask where your thoughts were, and I don't know how much you know about those other rums that are doing that, or if you've had experience with them. But what does organic rum mean to you and Copalli? And then maybe share a little bit of your thoughts on organic rums in the market as a whole.
Well, I think, I don't know if I have thoughts about organic rum in particular. My thoughts about organic farming is that, there's this preconceived notion that when you farm organic, the yields are much lower and it's much more expensive, all the processes involved, and it's just much more, it's not an efficient way to grow.
Makes sense.
Food, right? And those concepts are absolutely wrong. It can be just as cost effective to grow something organically, depending on how you're doing it. And if you're using a holistic method to grow, right? If all you're doing is throwing organic chicken manure on the fields as your process, and you're calling that's organic, well, yeah, then that's probably going to cost more, right? But if you're looking at the entire environment, recognizing that the bacteria and the organisms and the mycelium and all that stuff that grows in the ground and provides nutrients and transforms the nutrients in the ground, the elements in the ground to provide food for the plants that are growing, that's all integrated unit. You can do that at a much cheaper price, or at least at a cost-effective price, and your yields are better. Our yields per acre for our cane are typically can go from 35 to 50 tons an acre. In the fields up north where they grow commercially, they struggle to produce 25 tons an acre.
Wow.
So we got to be doing something right. And, our inputs more expensive? Sure, but we don't have to put quite as many of them on there. And we can produce rum at a reasonable price. Is it as cheap as, if we made it from, you're making spirits from corn? No, it's not, right? It's more than that. Or if we do, or certainly from molasses, right? It's more than making molasses. But it is, for the type of product that we're making and the quality that we're producing, we can produce a reasonably priced product. So if guys are charging that much more for it, maybe it's a organic premium that they think they can get in the marketplace. Maybe those farmers that are growing it are, more expensive, but I don't think it has to be. And I think we show that it doesn't have to be.
Do you do any kind of the organic certification processes or anything like that?
We're organically certified. So every year we're inspected. Both the distillery is inspected and the farm's inspected.
Okay.
To ensure that we're utilizing organic processing. And really what it is, it's really a huge paperwork tracking problem, right? So you have to track all the inputs that go into the field, what gets transported to the distillery, all the processes in the distillery, and when it goes back out. And also, so we do this drill every time. They'll pick a shipment from during the year, and they'll say, okay, shipment X, trace for me, do a traceability report from all the way back to the field. So they'll want to see those types of things. So that's all part of the process.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I want to do that job, but then after you said that last part, I'm not sure I want to do that job.
The paperwork. One more thing I wanted to ask about, the cane side of things. We've had a few different distilleries on the podcast that are growing sugarcane and are, I think what people would describe as terroir driven rums. And I think there's distilleries approach this from different angles. Some of them, they really want to emphasize the difference that the cane varietal, the way cane varietal can impact differences in flavor. Other distilleries really want to showcase the way, certain areas, different patches of land can inform flavor. How does Copalli look at that? And, you spoke a little bit to the different cane varietals, but do you also look at different areas where you're growing cane, and do you notice differences that you get from cane juice that comes from one area versus another?
Yeah, I know Renegade's done a bunch of work on that.
Yeah, we had them on the show recently, so it's freshly in my mind.
Yeah,
I mean, I know I'm sure they don't care what we do, but I look at guys like that as almost as my brothers, right? Or maybe my second cousins, because we're all kind of trying to develop the same type of product here or new market for this product. But so we haven't kind of done that. We focus more on the varietals. We do notice as product comes through the distillery, the operators, myself, can tell where they've shifted fields sometimes, that the rum will taste different. The way the cane looks is different. The rum will taste different. We haven't kind of gone as far as to track those individual nuances through the barrel. I think that for us, it's kind of like maybe that's a second order effect that we're looking for. Certainly the varietal dominates more than the location. We probably could break it into about 3 locations down close to the distillery, and then there's another field about 40 minutes away that probably it's also different. So maybe that's something we start looking at in the future after we've kind of had a few consistent years of developing a product and be able to track how that goes on. But right now we're not really looking at that or using that as a tool to talk about.
Sure. I like that you're looking at other entrants into the marketplace as kind of brothers or cousins. By the way, I like the friendly spirit there. So I wanted to shift gears a little bit. I mentioned I had a glass of the Copalli White. I also have a glass of something I don't usually drink, which is it almost actually, I feel wrong calling this a flavored rum, because I think the connotation of a flavored rum is something that is less than 40% flavored with stuff that isn't all that natural and then sweetened heavily. So
and marketed heavily.
So this is the cacao rum that Copalli has done, and I wanted to ask, what was your first reaction when you were or maybe it was your idea, I don't know, did someone come to you and say, hey Ed, we want you to make a chocolate rum, and how did that strike you at first, and then how did you approach it? What was the creative process like?
So here's the story on that one. This is a good story. So early in the first couple of years after we started, marketing team was bringing down groups, we'll call them instanistas, right, down to the distillery to kind of promote the distillery and take pictures of their beauty.
So these are like influencers,
right? Influencers.
Okay.
In some of those groups, they actually had people that knew stuff about the business, and one of them was a lady named Devin Tarby, and she is a partner at Death & Co.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
So we've since become friends, but at the time, so it was one of these evenings where everyone had a bunch to drink. And so she gets me on
one of many.
She starts making, a few cocktails, and then she looks at me and she says, Ed, you should make a creme de cacao. And I said, Devin, I hate that shit.
I was hoping the story would be something like this.
because we on the farm we also grow cacao for making chocolate, and there's kind of like a little proprietary chocolate making operation. So I let that idea kind of drift around my head for, I would say, for about a year, and I don't know what made me decide to do it. It's like, screw it, I'm going to give it a try. So in my own little distillery, I had gotten quite a bit of facility in making gins. I made private gins. I'd made private gins for restaurants, for Blue Hill Group. I would make their own seasonal gins. So I said, well, I'm gonna make it like I'm making gin. So I took a bunch of what I thought was the correct ratio of roasted cacao nibs, put it in a container. I put column rum in it. I let it macerate for a few days. I stuck everything in my test still, and I started it up. And when the flow started coming out, I guess I don't know if anybody heard me, but no one was there. But I started getting this maniacal laugh as soon as it came over the still, because the whole room smelled like a dark chocolate bar as it was coming out. And I said, this is freaking amazing. Right?
Yeah.
So that's how that started, right? It was an idea, in a bar. It took me kind of a while to think, well, maybe there's something there. At least maybe I was bored, and I'll say, I'll give this a shot. But that was the genesis of the product. So yeah, it wasn't, marketing didn't come up and say, we need a chocolate rum. I had to convince people of that too. It's like, do we really need this? Was it? Yeah. But that's where it came from.
Well, and like when you were describing the scent there in the distillery, I'm sure what I have in the glass doesn't quite capture that moment that conjured the maniacal laugh. But I mean, when you smell it, I mean, it smells like sticking your nose and like unwrapping a really high quality dark chocolate,
right? Exactly.
And sticking your nose in it. It's pretty remarkable. And I think John and I are both people that approach chocolate rum with a little bit of skepticism and a little bit of like, I'm probably not going to be that into this.
Oh, believe me, I get a lot of that when I offer people on tastings.
Yeah. Like, well, I was one of them.
It's like, I don't know. Okay, I'll give it a try. Yeah.
I think I told Will about that afterwards. I was like, I was one of them, and I was like, I don't know, that cacao rum, Will, is great.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, normally we don't, turn these interviews into praise sessions, but it's 40%, it's not sweetened, and it doesn't taste sweet, but at the same time it's extremely approachable. I would imagine I could give this to my parents aren't people who really drink neat spirits. I think I could give this to them and it would be acceptable to them. So it's and at the same time I find it interesting as well. So it's really kind of threaded the needle.
Wait, taking one step back though, did the idea to distill it after you macerated it with the cocoa nibs come from the infused gin tradition you were saying? Or was that just okay? Yeah. We stick to mostly rum here, so I don't know. I have a whole lot of gin knowledge. But
use it and redistill it. That's the technique. That's my
got it.
That's my technique.
Do you use the pot or the column still for that now?
We use the column still.
Okay.
But still, once you redistill it, you kind of obliterate all the
got it
in the pot still. And for this, you really want the botanical to come through and show.
Right. Yeah, there might be a little bit of clashing between that heavier pot still and the
that makes sense. Yeah. So you mentioned earlier there wasn't anybody doing what you were doing in Belize with the cane juice rum, and I still don't think there is anybody doing what you're doing. I don't think so. I think you're the only ones.
Yeah.
But I know there is a Belizean rum out there that actually I think has been experiencing a bit of a resurgence, at least in the U.S. market. And at least I will say in the rum geek circles, right? There's been a lot of good Belize releases from Travelers and some other distilleries in Belize, and of course what you're doing at Copalli. So I just was curious to know how often, if at all, do you talk to other producers there? Is there ever any discussion about a national category? Because I think already you're at a tough place with the cane juice versus the molasses. So but just looking for your thoughts on that.
No, we don't really chat that often. Those guys, came down to visit when we first kind of came up. So a lot of oohing and ahhing at the new equipment and stuff like that. But we don't really, the way we do things are just so different. We're both kind of members of the Caribbean Rums Association.
WRSPA.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of like, where our relationship kind of begins and ends. We're not, they produce a different product than we do in different methods. And so there's just a lot of cost up there.
Tip the hat as you walk by, and that's about it.
Yeah. What has anything come of being a WRSPA member? I mean, I know not every new distillery becomes a WRSPA member. A lot of them are rum distilleries that have been around for a long time. Have you benefited from that in terms of sharing of knowledge or getting to see what other producers are doing or anything like
I think
that?
I think it's a benefit to see what other people are doing and how they're approaching the business and how the industry or how the market is impacting them. Every once in a while there's a technical presentation that's interesting to see. Sometimes it applies to what we're doing. Sometimes it doesn't, right? But that doesn't mean it isn't interesting. So on whole, it's not a tremendous commitment in time and resources to that. So it's absolutely worth doing.
Speaking of kind of the broader landscape of rum, we've mentioned some of the other distilleries out there. We're seeing more and more new distilleries every year making cane juice rum. In the Caribbean, even in the US as well. Often, places that don't have as much of a tradition doing it as the French Islands. We mentioned Grenada earlier as another one. Where do you kind of see the category going in the next decade or so? And does it excite you to see others jumping into it?
Well, I think this is a situation where for us to be successful as an individual rum maker and as a brand, it has to be more prevalent, right? If we're the only ones out in the wilderness saying, "Hey, we got cane juice rum here," no one will ultimately care. It's got to be kind of broad based,
right?
I think there'll be more and more of it because the ability for people to source quality molasses for all the molasses producers is clearly getting more and more difficult.
Yep.
Sugar mills just get more and more efficient.
Yep.
And the quality of molasses keeps going down, and it's more and more difficult to make rum from that. So guys are looking to control their source of input to the product, right? And nobody wants to build a sugar mill, right? So to make their own molasses. Right, yeah. And so it's you get drawn into making sugarcane juice rums, which I think has more nuance to it. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to degrade anybody else's product.
You don't want to jump down that rabbit hole.
I think it offers something new in the marketplace, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
20 years ago, nobody thought tequila was maybe it was 25 years ago. I'm an old guy, but a couple of decades ago, nobody thought tequila was is a quality product, right? Now it's like, no one thinks twice about spending $50-$60 for a bottle.
It's true.
I think, well-made cane juice rums can follow that same evolution, right? For guys that do it right. And once people kind of get used to the nuance and the dissonance in that you get in those flavors, right? I think people are more and more, society is willing to accept more and more dissidence in their foods and what they drink and their music as time goes on. And I think this is just going to ultimately, hopefully while I'm still making it, becomes accepted in the marketplace.
Yeah, I know John and I are rooting for it as well.
Oh yeah.
And really, that what you spoke to with the difficulties with molasses and more molasses producers trying to get control of their sugarcane source. I think it's on one hand, it's scary to me because I love cane juice rums, but I love molasses rums too. And sometimes I hear about the molasses supply and I get a little worried about what the future looks like. But at the same time, I think a lot of these producers are, making investments in new and different things and, maybe combining the sources that they're using. I think it's going to lead to a lot of really interesting
Well, that's Richard Seale doing that in Foursquare, right? He's
exactly
he's adding cane juice to some of his molasses batches, and playing games like that.
Yeah. So you mentioned we've covered the black cane that is coming, hopefully at some point this year. You mentioned there's a 5-year rum on the horizon. Yep. That will be your first like age statement release. Absolutely. Correct? Yep. So I'm imagining you as a distiller, you've been there for 7-8 years.
I'm finishing up my 8th year, and actually technically it's not, because the cognac release was actually a 4-year release. So
so you did this would be the first mass market,
right? This would be the first kind of larger, more than 50 cases.
So how does it feel after putting in the 7-8 years of work to now be at the point where you will have a bottle you can point to that has an age statement on it, and it's something that lots of people can enjoy instead of just the little kind of micro releases?
Well, I think for me personally, it's incredibly gratifying, right, and rewarding that you're finally able to, because that's part of being a distiller or a rum maker, is having an aged product on the marketplace, right? Certainly the white products or the unaged products, they pay the bills, but I think as far as
the chocolate products,
chocolate products, but as far as having that little extra credibility and something to show off in the marketplace, it's important, and it's important for me. The pride that I have and the people who make it with me have in the product, to be able to do that and present that to the public is very important.
Is that going to be 90 proof as well, or a little lower?
No, that one we're going to keep at 88 to match the rested rum. So you could see how those things kind of transition over time.
Okay. Well, even the extra,
and ultimately we'll probably stay at 5 years, and at some point, if we have any left over, we might have a 10-year at some point. So that's kind of like the next view.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate the extra 2%, just as we appreciate it in the white.
We do.
No, I mean, honestly, like I think that goes just that little bit goes a long way over going past 80. So I wish more producers would do that as well. So well, and I think we've covered just about everything we wanted to get to. We have a final special segment of the show called the Rapid Fire Round. My co-host John Gulla prepares a series of questions, both straightforward and fun, off the wall prompts, and we put a very generous 60 seconds on the clock and see how many our guests can get through. So are you up for this? The challenge?
Why not? There might be some long pauses in there.
We edit those out. Don't worry about it.
It might not be quite as rapid as you think, but I'm willing to do it.
Okay, I had to bend down and get my phone, but I'm the timekeeper in this.
Yes.
John leads the way. I just watch the clock and occasionally chime in. But
I can't imagine. Well, I can't remember any other rapid fire segment I've been this scared to death, because Ed is such a good, serious man, and a Marine officer background, and I feel like I'm gonna bring stuff, and he's gonna look at me funny, and that's gonna be the end of it, and he'll just leave the Zoom session. It'll be over.
Well,
hopefully we don't get there.
My dad was an Army officer, and so military men do have a sense of humor, I think. So
I don't take myself too. I want to be taken seriously, but I don't take myself too seriously.
Good. Okay, we need that. That's where we want to go with this.
All right, John, are you ready to go over there?
We are totally ready.
All right, I've got 60 seconds and go.
All right, neat or on the rocks, Ed?
Neat.
Column, pot, or blend?
Pot. Right.
Knew that.
Okay,
one.
We know that one. Yeah. Aged or unaged?
Unaged pot.
Oh.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. And we know the answer to this one: molasses or cane juice.
Cane juice.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Your favorite rainforest animal?
Jaguar.
I was going to say jaguar as well.
Solid.
I've been to a rainforest once in Costa Rica, and there was a spider there that was as big as my hand that scared the crap out of me. What animal scares you the most there?
Maybe an alligator.
Oh, okay. I didn't even know there were alligators there.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean,
okay.
We've got those at every 20 feet in Florida. So, in your opinion, the best rum mixed drink or cocktail?
Daiquiri.
Makes sense. Okay. Copalli's rums are barrel rested. Well, you have the barrel rested, which sort of implies it had the right amount of time to wake up feeling its best. Does that mean we should also call a longer aged Copalli rum barrel groggy, or maybe barrel overslept, hibernated?
No.
We'll just go with the 5 years. Yeah.
Okay, 5 year makes sense. Your favorite person to share a great bottle of rum with?
The mother of my children.
Okay, good answer. She will appreciate that. The best country or distillery making rum right now not located in Belize?
That is more difficult. I love the stuff that some of the Hawaiian guys are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, nice. Yeah.
I wish I had the opportunity to taste more of what the Renegade guys are doing. But my personal, if I was looking on the shelf to buy something, I would probably buy something from Foursquare. So
come full circle then. Yeah.
Okay, makes total sense. All right, we're gonna try something here. This is gonna be interesting, but I have to say I really enjoy the marketing and the look the brand Copalli brings. Everything is really well put together. I know I've remarked on that on the show before with Will, but you don't have a jingle. So I figured, maybe I could find a jingle out there for you guys. And I wanted to start from a place that made sense with some maybe popular ones and see if we can land on something. So I'm going to give you a couple jingles and you tell me 1 to 10, 10 being the best, what you think of them.
All right.
Here we go. Here's the first one. Goes like this. Give me a DAC. Give me a DAC. I want another daiquiri with Copalli rum.
That's a 2.
Oh,
we don't like that one. All right. Well, they don't get any much better here, Ed. So let's go with Copalli Rainforest Rum.
That's still another 2. Yeah.
Oh, I thought maybe you liked that one a little bit.
Yeah,
I thought it was
I saw
get
crack
to
a smile there.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna need Will's help for this last one. Will, you need to give me the baseline.
You're gonna pull me into this?
Yes, you're gonna join me. Will, you're gonna do the Chili's baseline here, but instead of Chili's, you're gonna say Copalli. Okay, so if you can give me that, we're gonna go for it. Yes.
Oh my god. Okay.
You can do it.
So like I want my Copalli then. Okay.
Exactly. Yes.
I want my Copalli.
There we go. Keep it going. Copalli organic rum.
I fell apart. I couldn't keep it going.
You guys got a 7.
Great sustainable rum, single estate. There we go. All right, we're gonna land on that one then. Excellent.
Maybe a record for the longest. We had to get all those jingles in there. As I said, it's a very generous 60 seconds. But thank you for being a good sport, Ed. Before we wrap everything up, I know we covered a lot of ground. Was there anything we didn't get to? Anything else people should keep their eye out coming from the distillery anytime soon?
No, I think we talked about the 2 new products, and there might be an occasional new flavor in the same spirit that we've done the cacao rum. So we'll see what happens with that.
Sweet.
I'm imagining another, locally sourced ingredient, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. Something we grow ourselves. Yep.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I'll honestly, I can say that maybe one of the first flavored rum products I might look forward to based on this one. So
yeah.
Well, thanks for taking the time to chat with us.
Thank you.
As we said, we know it's middle of the harvest season. You're very busy, so appreciate you taking some time out of the day. Thanks for joining us.
Great talking to you guys. A lot of fun. Thank you very much.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Rumcast. If you want to learn more about Copalli, we'll put some links up in the show notes to their website and maybe there's some other good interviews, articles out there we'll link to in the show notes as well if you want to learn more. And hey, if you want to get more Rumcast content, you can join us on Patreon, patreon.com/the Rumcast. That is where we are doing bonus episodes. We're doing happy hours, early access to episodes, ad-free episodes. So it's a great place to go and join the community. Almost 100 strong at this point, growing all the time. So it's fun stuff. But John, in the meantime, if they want to get in touch with us, if you have questions about the episode, about the show, suggestions, if you want to make fun of my Demerara rum bracket from the previous episode a little bit more, how can they get in touch with us, John?
we've peppered the internet at this point with our influence everywhere. You just look, you can't throw a digital rock and not hit us on the internet now, Will. We're at specifically Facebook. We have a Facebook page there at the Rumcast. You can find us on Instagram, where we're going to post there, and I think we're starting to try to post a little bit more other varied content there as well between episodes to help sustain between those long 2 weeks our That's usual right. releases. Mm-hmm. So more stuff through Instagram and Facebook. We've all but abandoned Twitter at this point, Will. But we'll try to keep posting at least the links that for the new episodes that come out.
The links will flow.
Yeah, they'll be there. You'll see them, and then they'll lead you to other places where we're at. And of course, we're online ourselves at therumcast.com, so you can always go there. You can send us an email if you want to talk, host@rumcast.com, and send us an email and talk about what you want to talk about. Tell Will why he's wrong about everything. It's not just a Guyana thing. Let's all be honest. It's it's a bunch of different things.
Don't limit it to that. Yeah. There's all kinds of things that I'm wrong about all the time. So
and occasionally I'm wrong as well. Will occasionally.
Every now and then. So please send us your emails there, and we'll look forward to reading those. But until next time, John, I'll see you then.